Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, BDO's Introduction to Cybersecurity 101, Vulnerability and Risks. My name is Antonio. I am the marketing lead for BDO Consulting's technology practice, and I will be your host for this presentation. We are excited to have you here today and hope to bring you a wealth of value as we take you through the basics of cybersecurity protection, as well as response and reaction against overwhelmingly increasing cyber attacks. Before we get started, I would like to highlight a few features of the platform. You will notice a number of widgets at the bottom of your viewing area. If you have any technical questions, please use the chat box circled in red. I would kindly ask that you direct your questions to myself, listed as BDO Consulting Technology. Your questions will be answered towards the end of the presentation. With that, I would like to hand this presentation over to Eric Obaye. Thank you.
Thank you, Antonio. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eric Obaye, and I am Vice President for Consulting and Cybersecurity for BDO Consulting. I'm based in Montreal, and I've been evolving in the IT advisory services sector for the last 25 years. I will be talking about the basics of cybersecurity today. So everything that you wanted to ask about cybersecurity but didn't dare. And as Antonio mentioned, we'll be able to answer some of the questions at the end of the 20-25 minutes of my presentation. So first, and a quick introduction on BDO. BDO is the fifth larger professional services firm present in 162 countries, 1,500 offices around the globe. In Canada, we have 125 offices, and we are providing advisory services, audit and assurance, as well as tax services for the mid-market. More than 3,500 people, and we've been existing for the last 95 years. Within BDO Consulting, we provide strategy and operations, risk and security, human resources, as well as technology services. And within technology, we are providing strategic advisory services, and I am responsible for this practice across the country. We're providing integrated implementation services as well as managed services for our clients. We are industry focused, meaning that our solutions and advice are tailored to meet specific industry requirements and challenges of our customers. So as I said, six industry-focused advice with six major industries: energy and natural resources, financial services, public sector, manufacturing and distribution, non-for-profit, as well as general industry, which basically gather retail, technology, life science, and professional services. And of course, all our four service lines are servicing the six industry mainly. So getting into our presentation today, I will make a quick introduction on the concept of cybersecurity, speak to you a little bit about the threats, some of the issues that we have encountered with some of our clients, and of course that we can find in the marketplace, and provide you high-level solutions or tricks that can be easily applied for your organization. So when we talk about information security or cybersecurity, we basically talk about three different dimensions: availability, confidentiality, and integrity. So let's take them one by one. Availability is basically the capability of the organization to have access to systems and data and to make sure that they will enable the operations, the business operations, to continue seamlessly. And of course, hackers would be able to jeopardize this availability by putting your systems down and that way discontinuing your business operations. When we talk about confidentiality, we talk, of course, about the access to information that would be limited to authorized person. Nobody would want, his personal information, his credit card number or social security number to be publicly available or to be traded on the dark web. And of course, hackers are eager to get in touch or in possession of this information. And we will see later what would be the price or what could be the price of such information on the black market. And integrity. Integrity is ensuring that data is not compromised. And one can think of a hacker that would have access to your systems and that would change directly in the database the bank account of a supplier and by his own bank account. And when you would remit the check to the supplier, it would eventually not be paid to the supplier, but to the hacker. So the integrity of the information of the data is the third dimension when we talk about cybersecurity. Common questions that I'm sure you or your IT department or your CEO have been asking yourselves and themselves. Are my systems vulnerable and subject to external attacks? When we talk about cloud, is it true that cloud applications are not secure? And when I'm talking about my level of maturity in terms of cybersecurity, is it enough? And if it's not, how do I enhance my level of protection against cyber attacks? Those are legitimate questions that I'm sure you and people in your organization have asked yourselves. Other questions like, my cyber insurance broker is asking me to self-assess my cybersecurity. How should I do that? Or what should I do in order to make sure that this level of cybersecurity would enable me to be entitled cyber insurance? Is my cybersecurity strategy relevant or my investment sufficient? And finally, even if I have put everything I think is relevant, but are they really working the way they should work? And therefore, is my cybersecurity chain effective enough to protect me? All those questions are legitimate, and we at BDO have the capability of providing sound answers that would help you make the best decision as far as your cybersecurity posture is concerned. Some interesting statistics that we have gathered. Hackers attack every 39 seconds, and their cyber attacks, 43% target small and medium-sized business. And why that? We have seen that the mid-market has been subject to more and more cyber attacks because probably this is an easier target for hackers with organizations that have less means of protection and less means of reactions. So that's why the trend is that the targeted SMEs will increase in proportion in the coming years. 64% of businesses have been attacked through the web, which means that even those organizations who have little exposure or who think that they would be less targeted because they are small, everybody has a website. And therefore, the capability of hackers to get into the organization system through the web, through public exposed website, for instance, is constituting the major part of the way that hackers use to attack organizations. And 62% of those organizations were subject to phishing attacks. Phishing means that you receive an email, and this email is a fake email from your CEO or from the IT department or from iTunes asking you to give your login and password. So 62% of organizations were subject to phishing attacks. And the best way that we think should be used in order to minimize the impact of these attacks is training your personnel and making your employees aware of the possibility of such attacks and how they happen. Other statistics, 59% of organizations were subject to malicious code, 51% have experienced denial of services, and quite surprisingly, the average time to detect malicious or criminal attack is 170 days, which means that you can spend half a year having undercover hackers within your systems, leaking information, stealing data, reviewing everything that can be done in order to be able to take the bigger portion of and the biggest advantage of your system, your data, and your exposure. And last but not least, statistics show that 99% of computers are vulnerable. But not only computers, devices like tablets, like phones that you bring to work could be subject to attacks, and of course should be included in the cybersecurity policies that organizations are putting together. Some of the data now. 60% of attacks in 2016 were conducted by insiders, which means that when we talk about cybersecurity, we don't only talk about external hackers, but we need to consider as well the threat from the inside, from a malicious employee, for instance, that would take a revenge by leaking data or erasing other type of data. 46% of companies identified a cybersecurity vulnerability in the last year, and 35% of users have weak passwords. And even those who have strong passwords don't use the appropriate method to store them. And who has not seen a password written down on a post-it and just put on the side of a screen of a PC? Passwords, of course, are one of the elements that is the easiest way for hackers to have access to your systems and your data. Some examples, and I won't be long on these ones, but everybody remembers Equifax and the leakage of data, personal information of thousands and even millions of their clients. Equifax had undergone a major suit that resulted into dozens of millions of dollars of fine against them and for their clients. At the Olympics in Korea at the beginning of the year, everybody remembers the fact that the website went down for a couple of minutes and for a couple of hours. And this was, of course, the objective of the hackers to intervene with such a wide audience in the marketplace. And last but not least, I'm sure you remember in last April when the famous song Despacito disappeared from YouTube and Vivo, and that again was the result of the exploitation of a security vulnerability on the site of Vivo by hackers who take kind of happiness to be able to have this famous song disappear from the web. Examples of large organizations, you can tell me, well, as I said, those organizations have enormous capability to invest in cybersecurity, and yet they have been hacked. So one can think of the level of investment and the level of cybersecurity that small and medium-sized organizations could bring forward. And everybody has to agree on the fact that those cybersecurity mechanisms would not be 100% bulletproof. The only objectives of the increasing of cybersecurity is basically to render the life of those hackers harder, but not prevent them from doing it. And of course, one of the reasons why we witness this explosion of attacks is the fact that we are in an environment that is in constant evolution, and that the surface that could be attacked by hackers is increasing and growing exponentially. Much more information systems, higher use of information technology in the daily life, connected devices with Internet of Things, even dishwashers now are connected to the web. So the surface to which hackers have access in order to gather information and to be able to elaborate sophisticated attacks is increasing. But also the fact that information technology is being consumed different way. More and more, of course, the outsourcing, the cloud computing, the use of the internet in public spaces, the mobility and the bring your own device policies enable a lot of higher capability or more numerous capability for hackers to hack and have access to unprotected assets in the marketplace. Of course, regulation is helping organizations to be more conscious about what needs to be done as far as cybersecurity is concerned. And of course, in Canada, since November 1st, the new PIPEDA law make it more difficult for organizations to avoid taking into considerations confidential and personal information protection. So this is an important message for the marketplace that this personal information needs to be protected, and that now any breach or compromission of personal information by any organization in Canada should be both reported to a commissioner as well as communicated to the related people whose data were stolen or compromised. So why are hackers trying to steal information? Well, simply because they have a price. And, credit card number is worth up to $100, and the username and password around $5. And of course, those prices are varying depending upon supply and demand. And we have witnessed in the last year a decrease in the price of those data, which means that more and more hackers are putting data on the marketplace. Of course, because there is more offer, well, the price are getting down. So solutions can be found in 3 dimensions to enable an increase of cybersecurity protection. The first one is around the framework of cybersecurity within organizations. So when we talk about framework, we talk about security policies, we talk about security management processes, we talk about methodologies of security development, for instance, and we talk about all deontology rules that need to apply for the use of technology and digital assets within organizations. The second dimension, of course, is to talk about organization and to increase the level of awareness of employees in cybersecurity. And the third, of course, and probably the most common that people think of, is the technological means. So to be able to put in place protection capability with firewalls, with routers, secured monitoring, as well as to implement user access management, identity management, and everything around the detection and monitoring capability of any abnormal behavior on networks or on servers. This being said, cybersecurity is not only about cybersecurity. It's also about simple IT regular practices that need to be in place within organization. And the first and foremost is software and hardware updates. And this is standard IT practice, but this is one of the areas where organizations are still behind. And if you remember the big thread that went out, Pathia, that basically concerned millions of PCs and servers around the globe, this virus touched only the equipment that were not subject to Microsoft patch, who had been known for the last 6 months. And of course, the other ones who had applied the patch were not concerned and were not touched by this virus. So simple hardware and software update that can be found in all the vendors' websites. As I said, employee awareness is one of the major areas to make sure that phishing campaigns would not be effective enough. The implementation of anti-spam, antivirus, and web filters are now more and more common within organizations. And sometimes they play tricks on users who cannot access specific website for the business because they were filtered. Or anti-spam technology that are too stringent and doesn't allow a regular email to go through. So of course, there is a balance between increasing the level and the posture of cybersecurity and the user friendliness of those mechanisms that of course impede to some extent the user friendliness of IT. The enabling of more complex passwords. Everybody of course knows the 8-digit uppercase, lowercase, and number rules that need to apply to passwords. And of course, not disclose any password to anybody in an email, even if it's coming from the CEO. Knowledge of SSL certificates, and I'm sure everybody has seen such certificate pop up on websites, and your brother asks you if you would like still to go in this site, although there are no SSL certificates. Well, this is a sign that when you have an SSL certificate on a website, that this website is officially secure. So again, train our employees and your employees to identify those sites who have and those sites who don't. The establishment of data backup system is the best way to avoid encryption that a ransomware would make on your data to be effective. And of course, make sure that you have a proper backup, that your backup are tested on a regular basis, and that they have the proper scope to cover the data that would be necessary for you to resume your business operations. Of course, in your policies and your security mechanisms, take into account mobile and personal services data. Communication between IT and staff is key, and the staff and the employees need really to make sure that they are in communication if specific event happens in security. Last would be around the development of clear security policies and the making sure that those policies are known by the employees and are applied both by business users as well as IT users. And last but not least, the testing of the technological environment and staff is key, and you need to know what you don't know. So making some vulnerability testing, doing some penetration testing by specialized organization, and we at BDO do this kind of environmental check of technological environment assessment and cybersecurity risk assessment. But not only should the assessment be around the technology, it should as well be directed to the staff to test their resilience to cybersecurity attack and the capability not to be tricked by phishing or social engineering. Those things are easy to implement and are basically not cybersecurity practice. There are standard IT practice that should be in place in the major part of all organizations. So this is the end of my presentation, and I'm open now for questions.
Thank you, Eric. I would just ask that if anyone has any questions, please direct them to BDO Consulting Technology in the chat box, and I'll be happy to pass those along to Eric. Thank you. Eric, we have a question. Thoughts on cybersecurity insurance?
Thoughts on cybersecurity insurance? Well, more and more bigger organizations have now access to cybersecurity insurance in order to make sure that the consequences of a cyber intrusion or a cyber attack would be covered by insurance. In that case, of course, the way that the insurer is asking the organization to increase or at least to disclose their level of security is key. And more and more smaller organizations are leaning towards taking this insurance because nobody now is spared by these attacks. And I have to say as well that more and more even individuals are proposed cybersecurity insurance. It's quite widespread in Europe, and it's coming to North America now.
Another question here, Eric. What services does BDO provide for performing an initial assessment or strategy for cybersecurity?
Well, we propose initial assessment and strategy services as far as cybersecurity is concerned. And of course, usually these services begin with a business risk assessment based on cybersecurity. So we understand what would be, the major elements that could be compromised by an attack. Should it be the continuity or your business or your production line, for instance, or the theft of personal or confidential information. We assess, of course, the level of protection of reaction of the organization and propose strategies of remediation that could be either short-term or longer-term.
Another question here. What do you think of an additional encryption within a cloud solution, and where would you keep the encryption keys for that cloud solution encryption?
As I said, I'm not the technical guy, and if I didn't say that, please forgive me. I have several members of my team who are much more knowledgeable in technology and in cybersecurity as I am. So I won't be able to answer that question. But if you would like me to take it offline, I would be happy to have it answered.
Another one here. Can you speak more to what kind of security policies should be or need to be in place?
Yes, definitely. When we talk about cybersecurity policy, we talk basically of a framework of policies from the overall corporate security policy that basically states the guiding principles that the organization agrees to apply as far as cybersecurity is concerned. It's usually a 2 to 3 pages document. And then from there, we usually develop directives, cybersecurity directives that give on each of the cybersecurity domain some details on what is going to be done in order to apply those guiding principles. And then we have the cybersecurity processes that basically detail the how we would apply those guiding principles. So it's really a framework of documentation, and the cornerstone is the corporate security policy.
Okay, awesome. All right, one more question here, and then I think we're going to wrap it up as we get to the top of the half an hour here. Does BDO do a combined physical and cybersecurity assessment together? Does BDO perform ICS cybersecurity assessments on OT networks?
We do actually provide penetration testing services as well as red teaming exercises, and that's both for information technology and operation technology type of clients, absolutely. So we usually combine penetration testing or red teaming exercises with more architectural approach to be able to understand from an architectural perspective, the strengths and weaknesses of the technology landscape. And we do it both on the information technology and the operation technology landscape.
Thank you, Eric. With that, I would like to conclude today's presentation. If there are any further questions, please see Eric Obaye's contact information in the slide in front of you. We'd like to thank you all for your participation and attendance and hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.